Hello and welcome to chocolate fans of all flavors, no matter where you might be tuning in from around the world today. My name is Clay Gordon. This is The Chocolate Life Live, and today we're going to be deconstructing transparency reports, whether they're called transparency reports, sourcing reports, annual reports, scorecards. What we're going to do is take a look at what they do tell you, what they may not be telling you, and how you might want to become a more critical, perhaps more skeptical reader of these reports. So we'll get back to you right after, right after the intro video. So hello and welcome everyone to this edition of The Chocolate Life Live. Today's topic is deconstructing transparency reports. And this has been a very, very interesting episode for me to prepare for. I probably spent more time in preparation of the materials that I'm going to be presenting today than at any other episode that I have done so far. And one of the things I do want to say is I do want to give a shout out to Emily Stone at Uncommon Cacao. She reached out to me, wanted to know about the economic analysis that I had prepared from their 2018 report, had some questions about it, had some comments on it. I was able to respond to her questions. I had some questions for her about what was and wasn't in that report. And I just want to give a thanks to Emily and to everyone at Uncommon for their support and what it is they're doing. I also need to give a shout out to Greg D'Alessandra and Anna McMurray at Dandelion, who both pointed out to me that the 2020-2021, or not 2019-2020 transparency report had just been published. And so I'm going to be able to include it in my discussion today. So, and that is that is one of the reasons why I say it's been a challenge for me. I've got some information at the last minute, and I'm trying to process it and trying to understand it and put it into this framework for today's episode. Before I jump into things, I do want to remind everybody that if you're watching live, please comment. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, there is a chat panel. There is the comments pane. You can put your comments and questions. So if you do have a question for me at any point, anything that I'm saying that you need clarity on, please let me know. If you have a comment on what it is I'm saying, again, please let me know. I can get these comments up on screen and share them and get them asked and answered. It's really, really important that I make sure that I'm communicating clearly to me. Also, if you're connecting from some place, any place, let us know where you're connecting from. We generally have people from half a dozen countries connect who share where they're connecting from, and please, always happy to have that information as well and share it with everybody. So a quick shout out, I'll get everybody up and let people know where you're connecting from. Man, this has been interesting. The first thing that I want to say is that this is not about judging anybody. I'm not going to judge anybody. I'm not here to call anybody out. I'm just here to ask questions based on what it is that I read and, things that jump out at me. Those people who have been regular listeners to the Chocolate Life Live over the last couple of months know that one of the things that I've been talking about is the importance of language and clarity of language and being precise, is part of that clarity, but also, this notion that the words we use inform our beliefs inform our actions, and our actions have consequences, right? And one of the things that I've been trying to do with when it makes sense in the context is to talk about how do we become more skeptical, or at least more aware of what it is that we're being told. And so what we want to do is we want to understand, are there techniques, are there tools that we can use to parse the information that we're being presented and get an idea of what it is that people are talking about, or what it is that we're being told. And that is the spirit that I want to get into today about all of this. There's a sense in which, I have tattooed Koko otaku, and otaku is a Japanese word that basically means geek or nerd, but there is a connotation of obsessiveness to it as well. And understanding statistics, understanding data is one place where I tend to get pretty obsessive about things, because I want to understand what it is that I'm told. So critical skepticism is the purpose of today. Again, I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not here to call anybody out. I just want to say, here are some techniques. Here are some things to look at. Here are some things that I would want to know more about when looking at these reports. And with that said, you'll notice that I'm sharing my screen right now. Right now, we have the homepage of The Chocolate Life up on the screen. This is what it looks like right now. It's live. So if you're interested in following, you can go to The Chocolate Life. You can click on this page. For every single one of the Chocolate Life live posts, I produce a post. And one of the things you'll do is that by the end of today, all of the resources which I use during the course of this, so links, so you don't have to write them down, you don't have to wonder where they are, but all the links, all the PDFs, everything that I'm presenting today will be here for you to be able to look at and download yourself. So you don't have to take my word for it, even though I'm presenting these live, but you have the opportunity to go and download these things and use them for yourself. Really, really important that you be able to do so. All right. And with that, let me get started. And I think the place that I'm going to start today is with the Uncommon 2018 Transparency Report. So, please don't worry about necessarily thinking you have to read these things, right? You'll be able to follow along after the presentation, and that you'll be able to download them and look at these things yourself. So I'm just going to be giving to you my narrative, right? So the first thing you may notice is that I have a search in here, and I'm searching for ecom because in 2018, Uncommon was relying on ecom for some aspects of their transportation logistics. And it turns out that ecom has been increasingly called out over the last couple of years for being a bad actor in terms of their responsibility for their supply chain, especially in West Africa. And one of the things that we have talked about in the past is if I am trying to do my best work, but what it is that I am associating myself with a bad actor, as a consumer, how far back down the supply chain, which includes the people that I rely on or the companies that I rely on for services, is the work that I am doing tainted by a bad actor in the supply chain? And one of the things that Emily Stone pointed out to me in our email correspondence is that they have completely divested themselves of any reliance upon ecom for any of their transportation logistics services. So that's a bonus that I learned over the course of putting this together. So if we look at this transparency report, one of the things that we have to think about is, what do we mean by transparency, right? And specifically, what do I mean by transparency, right? And I think that there are a couple of different things that we might consider when we think about transparency. So one of which is, I want numbers. So I want the numbers behind the story. If you're going to tell me a story, what I want is stuff that's going to back that story up, right? And I want those numbers. So that's part of it. Don't just tell me a story. Give me data to back it up. And then I want those numbers presented in a way that enables me to draw conclusions. The harder the formatting of the report makes it to draw conclusions, to do the analysis, to be able to look at things, the more frustrated I get, because it just requires a lot more work than I think that it is necessary in order to be able to come to the conclusions that I'd like to be able to come to. And I'll go over some aspects of that. So, but there is data that I need, and data is presented in a usable way and an easy to understand and grasp way. So many of you may know the old adage, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? But when I updated this for my story on the 2022 chocolate scorecard, which was produced by Be Slavery Free. It used to be Mighty Earth in 2021 and before then, where there are lies, damn lies, and infographics. So what we can do is we actually can use graphics, right, to tell what appear to be really, really interesting, really, really positive, really, really useful, usable stories. But in the end, reliance on graphics gets to be a real challenge. And so looking at the 2018 report from, let's get rid of the search. What we'll do is we'll see, right, table of contents, we're introduced to farmers, right? We've got sort of a mission statement, right, where they say what they were looking to, prosperity is key. They talk about the elements that make up what it is that they're doing. This notion that what they're doing is they want to support, chocolate makers increasing accountability. They talk about, okay, so here, ecom, right? But they talk about where they're sourcing from. They talk about the companies they're sourcing from, right? It's, very, very straightforward. And it's relatively easy to follow. Right, we come to here, and here we have some interesting things. So this is data that we're being presented with. That's important for me to understand what it is that's going on. So, for example, we're looking at a price curve for, this is the world market price for cocoa, or no, this is the Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana official farm gate prices. Here is the exchange price. Here is the farm price that Uncommon is paying. And here's the price that is being paid to the exporter. Fabulous. Okay, we can see that where the average farm gate price was $1.36 in 2018, the commodity price was $2.29, and on average, Uncommon was paying $2.57 per kilo. Right? Good. So we can see that. We have a trend. We can see a trend over the course of many years, which will come into play in a little later. But we've got a good overview of what's going on. I got to say, this is great. I love the fact that what Uncommon did is on one page. What they did is they put all this information. And not only that, but what they did is they said, okay, here is the farm gate price, right? If we bought from an association, here's the association price. Here's what happened at the port of export. Here's what happened landed or delivered. There might be a slight technicality. Here's the range of prices that we charged for that cocoa, right? And here's the volume of cocoa that we purchased. I mean, really, really straightforward, really, really easy to understand. We can see how the price changes as it moves through, cost and price changes as it moves from the farm to the chocolate maker. Really, really good. Quibbling here, I have to have a good memory, or I need to have some subject matter expertise to know that Maya Mountain, is in Belize, Oko Caribe is in the Dominican Republic, Pisa is in Haiti, Cacao Verapaz, all of these things are Guatemala. Obviously, Cacao de Colombia is an easy one to put together. Bokfa is in Africa. I mean, the origin, this is the supply, this is part of the supply partner information. The origin, I would like the country, right? I think also one of the things they've done, which is really, really nice, is they said they've taken some of the data from this chart, right? And they moved it to the bottom of the page. So the human mind is really good about making comparisons when they can be direct comparisons, but I have to go back and forth, like from one page or another page to a book or something like that. It's easy for us to get. And so kudos for putting all of this information on one page, right? So I know what the farm gate price was, right, in Ghana. So I can look at the Bokfa, right? And they go, oh, we paid 13 cents above the farm gate price. Cool, right? We know what the export price was. The average was $2.29. And so when I look at this export price, I can see we paid above average when it comes to the export price, keeping in mind that the difference between this and this is logistics costs associated with getting it from the farm to the port of export. And it may also include the cost of getting that cocoa onto a container, which means the container dressing and tests associated with it. It's not clear, but at least we do have this price progression. So that's really good. And what they've declared is down here is that some of these companies are in fact a subsidiary of Uncommon Cacao. Really, really nice, really, really straightforward. I really, really like this. So we're getting here a little idea about how big Uncommon is as a company, the number of staff that are involved in it, and some of the aggregate totals for what it is that they're doing in the countries of origin. Really, really nice. I've got that, right? They talk about their origins and what it is they're doing. They talk about what the differences in the market is. They give you information about a particular cooperative. So here's where things start to get a little funky, all right, in my opinion, which is that if we look at the difference between 2018, 2019, right? Okay, now all of a sudden, the first Maya Mountain is the first cooperative, and now it's about, so they're organized differently. This probably, I don't know why. I think that this one is organized according to this order, and this one is alphabetical. But what we do is we find that we now have to work a little bit harder, which is we find that we have some elements under biodiversity in the environment which are in one place, and yet they've been moved, right? So average farm size in hectares is now for some reason under farmer impact as opposed to an element in biodiversity. Not certain why that is, but what it does is it takes more work to decode what it is that's going on. If I'm trying to get a picture, now I need to look in two different places rather than one place. Fortunately, right, these are all in the same page, so I can do this. Another problem that I have with this is the average sale per farmer in kilos dry, right? But the price paid wet, right? So again, right, as somebody who is in the industry, you would know that there's roughly a 40% wet to dry ratio. So 1,000 kilos of wet is going to be 400 kilos of dry. You know that, so you can do the math on this, right? But this price paid wet, all right, it actually is the farm gate price wet, right? Not the dry price wet. So, okay, interesting. What we'll look to do is if we look at another report, let's come in here. What we'll do is for this farm is dry kilos. So this is the same cooperative, 2 different years. We now have a different price basis, right? And this makes it very, very, very difficult to compare what's going on. The numbers that are being used use different weight bases, and it's much more difficult to be able to compare. Again, I'm not accusing anybody of doing this deliberately. I'm not judging anybody for doing this. It's just that I look at these things, and what it is they say, it is now much harder for somebody to go and look at this and be able to make, what is the true difference between 2018, 2019, and 2020? It's just made it much, much harder to understand what it is that's going on. It's also really, really important when we look at, right, this is from the 2018 report. Okay, so if we have 115 registered farmers and 115 organic certified farmer coming out of Oko Caribe, and the average sales per farmer dry equivalent, so this might be wet, okay, as 4 metric tons. So 115 times 4 metric tons is 600 metric tons. They purchase 37.8. You have to use these numbers in order to get to this number. So this number doesn't reflect the value of cocoa, which was it's hard for me to see how this number, right, represents what it says it does, the average annual revenue from cacao per farmer, but not what the contribution from Uncommon is, because these numbers don't add up. Okay, so Again, this is hard to do, right? I am not a statistician. I am not an accountant. I do not play a statistician on television. I do not play an accountant on television. I do not play a statistician or an accountant on the internet. Just somebody who has some subject matter expertise, who's looking at this and going, huh, all right, I'm trying to make sense of things, and I have trouble making sense of these things, right? And when the weight bases change from year to year to year, it becomes much, much harder to do these things. I don't know what it is that I'm looking for. Also, one of the things that nobody does that I would like to do is if they're buying in another currency, there's an exchange rate that's associated with it. And so we don't know what the exchange rate is. One of the things that I think that FLO Fair Trade does, and ICO and bunches of other things, is that they buy in half a dozen currencies and they convert to euros or convert to US dollars. And so there's really, really hard to understand what's being paid. Again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything here. It's just one of the things that I've noticed is that the currency exchange is at any particular time is going to be a challenge to understand what this means going forward. I had one of the conversations I had with Emily this morning is 2018. This was here. It's missing in 2019, right? And they added a fifth criteria in here. Cool. It helps us get a better feeling for the market. What we'll notice in 2019 is that, right, that the difference in terms of what Uncommon was paying at the farm gate compared with what the world market price was, what compared to the Ghanaian farm price, narrowed. Not a good thing, not a bad thing. It's a bit of data. It's a data point that we can see coming from here. But that whole thing of everything on one page is missing. And maybe they reacted to some criticism, or they said, okay, but it showed up back again in the 2020 report. Great. I mean, really, really good thing for somebody who wants to understand. They can figure out what's understand. But missing here is these prices. So, if we go and look at the 2018 report, we find this pricing information. That pricing information is missing from this page. All right. So again, I need to work harder. I need to remember. It's just a little more difficult for me to do. Right. So if we then go take another look, this is a spreadsheet that I created looking at the information in the 2018 Uncommon Cacao annual report. And you can download it. Now, I do want, again, Emily pointed out that over here where I talk about gross margin in the version that you have that's uploaded that you can download, I do talk about gross margin. It's actually a contribution. And if I actually look at gross income, all I can do is calculate based upon, how much their purchase volumes were. So I know how much they purchased, and I could give ranges with respect to the price that got paid for it. But I don't actually know that what they purchased is how much they sold. And so these numbers, based on publicly available data, I mean, this is what they presented, and I have to do with it the best that I can. So, what I was able to do is I was able to calculate the total amount of cocoa that was purchased from each one of these places. I was able to go take a look at the prices that they published from the farm gate all the way through to the port of export. The sales range, low to high, again, publicly available information. And then what I did is I did a min, max, median on all of these things. Boom. I tried to follow my own recommendations. So what we'll do is we'll find the prices in terms of average world market price and the average farm gate price. And you can see there's a bunch of calculations here, which, you can look at, you can say, hey, Clay, I don't agree with you, or Clay, there's a mistake. Emily, thank you very much for pointing it out to me. The colors are just, represent high, low, and medium points. They're not value judgments, but they represent. And so you can look at things and go, oh, okay, this makes some sense. It helps me organize the data and think about the data and go take a look at what it is that goes on. And that's what this is for. It was an exercise, a geek exercise for sure, to help me understand. All right. So, Emily says, cool, exchange rate calculations are in the back of the 2018 report. So why don't we go do that? All right. So it's, I haven't taken a look at the back end of the 2018 report in quite some time. It's a lot of pages. There we go. Cool. Conversion to Belize dollars to US dollars. Fabulous. This is the kind of information that we want. right? This, by the way, this is a PDF file. And so you can embed links. And so one of the things I would recommend is that rather than forcing people to read through to the end and get to this information, that because you have a digital format in which you're delivering these things, you can in fact link to these where they are referenced further up in the document, just to make it easy for people like me to be able to go and do that. But Emily, let me get that comment up on page. Absolutely, exchange rate. I don't know anybody else, right, who's doing this, and I think it's really, really good. Hopefully it's in, I'm not going to take the time to scroll down, but hopefully it's also in the 2019 and 2020 reports. So absolutely here. I want to stop. We're 25 minutes or so through to get some questions. Certainly numbers, but also numbers in a way that compare apples with apples. Absolutely, right? So one of the things that we quickly learn is that everybody has their own way of reporting numbers and calculating numbers and trying to figure these things out. And so if everybody is reporting different things, it makes it very, very difficult to determine, right, when in fact we're comparing apples to apples. And so, let's give an example of that out of the 2018 report. All right, so I'm here at 2018. I can do this in 2020, but I can do this in 2018 with Maya Mountain. So here is the Maya Mountain report. They're got a $3.07 farm gate price and a landed price of $6 and a sales range of $8 to $8.10 to $8.80. If we go to, if we go to the Dandelion Report for 2018, so I believe this is the 2017-2018 report. What we can do is we can see in 2018 that they purchased for Maya Mountain. Let me zoom this up so that people can see a little better. They did purchase from Maya Mountain, and they paid $5,600 a metric ton, right? And whereas the farm gate price was $3,000 a metric ton, the export price was $560 a metric ton. And so you have to go and wonder, so let me go back to here. So it looks like what it is that in this case specifically, I can't say for all of the different cases, but in this case specifically, what it is that Dandelion is talking about is they're talking about an FOB port of export price. They may be talking about a landed price. They may be talking about a delivered price. They're not talking about farm gate price. And so if you would try to compare, any of the numbers on the Dandelion report with other brokers, specifically Uncommon this place, this is one example that I saw, you're not going to be able to make that direct comparison. Similarly, if we were to go to look, and we were to go look at this this Cahabon, Guatemala, it turns out that Cahabon is one of the cooperatives that Uncommon is involved with in Guatemala. And you go take a look at the prices, and what you see that this $7,000 a metric ton is not what the farm gate price is. So they're reporting different things. And so I would say that when certainly price isn't everything, right, as they say here, right? So, but playing an appropriate night. But they talk about wanting to be as open and transparent and give as much information as possible. I would say that focusing on the FOB price or the delivered price and not the farm gate price, right, and being open about the difference between what they actually paid, right, and what the farmer receives is not fully disclosing what it is that they're doing, right? Just again, in my opinion, that's not. So also, what we'll do is we'll see some year-over-year differences, right, which make it very, very difficult to compare what is you're doing. And I'm sorry, I would like to be staring at the screen the entire time, but I have to be staring at the camera the entire time, but I have to be splitting my attention over here on the screen and then looking at the comment stream. So I'm here, I'm fully engaged, want to hear from all of you, want to get the comments up on the screen. So, looking at, again, the 2017-2018 report. By the way, the 2017-2018 report was published in September of 2019. So they had at least 9 months from the end of one harvest, right, to be able to produce this. And they thought very hard about what to do. What I would say is graphics like this, right, look pretty, right? They give a trend. What we can see is, all right, the fact is that, they grew really big in 2017 and contracted in 2018. We'll see that as a trend in 2019, 2020. But because you can't you have to go to here in order to be able to look at these and understand, what these numbers actually mean. This is, in my opinion, it's a pretty infographic. It doesn't say a whole lot that's useful to the average person, right, who has no understanding of what these numbers mean, right? The little things you're doing there, there are better ways to go about doing this. For those people who may not know about this, there's a really, really fabulous series of books. A guy by the name of Edward Tufte and his wife, who actually is responsible for a huge amount of the work in this book. But one of his seminal book is called The Visual Display of Quantitative Information. It's a book that I think I became first aware of sometime in the mid-1980s. It is a phenomenal book, right? If you want to know about infographics and how infographics can be used to inadvertently, very often, tell misleading stories. However, you can also use infographics to deliberately tell misleading stories. Again, not making any judgments here. It's just an observation about what's going on. There's another place where I got a problem, and that is, this is total weight in kilograms, and this is price in metric ton. This is the price per metric ton, right? And I don't see again, total weight in kilograms, price per metric. I don't see any reason to change the order of magnitude of what's going on, right? I am totally happy with 6.0 metric tons or 12.65 metric tons as opposed to total weight in kilograms. I mean, in this particular case, the math is easy. You just replace the comma with a period, and we can do that. But I don't understand why there is a need to go and change the weight basis here. If you were doing this in and out of pounds, challenge. Greg. Okay, so Greg is we're talking about landed practices. Landed prices in the sourcing report. We note that in the report, and why, if you're curious. Greg, I'm happy to go about doing this. I read this fairly closely. I can't say that I've done it, but that's fine. You're talking about landed prices. That's all kind of stuff. But this is all about impact to the farmer. So we go through, I think it's all about impact to the farmer. We're talking about impact that we're making. You talk about how you get from here to here. Hey, and this is in the 2017, 2018 report. You're talking about Madagascar. I didn't see it in the 2019, 2020 report. You change the entire graphical layout for what it is that you're doing, right? Here's a point. It's like, okay, I don't know much of anything, right? I know this is Honduras, but why didn't you just put Honduras here, right? So people have to go here and they have to actually read closely, right, in order to figure out what's going on, right? Okay, all right. So you may be talking about landed prices. I don't know if you're talking about purchasing through Uncommon in this particular case, which I think you're doing, which would explain things. Actually, I could, here. This is, hey, Uncommon, right? You mentioned it twice. Anyway, again, the point is, maybe it is there, but I need to know to look for it. And I need to know specifically to do it. And it's really hard for me to be able to if you're talking about impact to farmers, right, in terms of what's going on, I don't know what the impact to farmer is based on what you're doing, right? I know what you paid at the export price, but I have no idea what you're paying in terms of farm gate prices. And, that's a thing that I think people want to know, right? Again, right, this is in my opinion, right? And what I'm trying to suggest is that what you may want to do is you may want to write this thing or a version of this thing, right, which enables people to understand the numbers behind the story, right, in a much more concrete fashion, right? Again, right, we can go back and forth on this in lots of different levels. So here's another thing. Here is a report from Taza, right? So I'm not calling out anybody singling anybody out specifically. But if I go look at the Taza report, here I've got a BOCFA, and I can come over here. This is a 2018 report. I can go to BOCFA. In this report, excuse me, let me search for it. And I can find that, oh, here's the farm gate price that Uncommon paid, and here's the farm gate price that Taza paid, and here this price paid could be export price, could be delivered price. But what I can do is I can compare it with other prices, and I can go, oh, cool. I mean, I get an idea about, what is this going on. These things appear to be in the same range, and I think that's cool. I have two different data points that seem to corroborate each other, and I like that. All right. They've got some data points about, right, how much cocoa they purchased. They've got data points about, hold on a second, data points about how they purchased, the number of farmers that involved, the number of women farmers. These are other things which are being done, right, in other places. Really important to be able to have, because one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to get to the point where is it possible to compare apples with apples, right? And yes, Greg, right? Absolutely, right? That is Guatemala. I know it's Guatemala because I've spent a lot of time in Nicaragua and a lot of time in Belize and a lot of time in Tabasco and Chiapas in Mexico. I know that is Guatemala. But you can't assume that the average reader of this report, right, who might be a chocolate fan, right, but isn't a subject matter expert, will immediately know that is Guatemala, right? And there's no reason not to spend the extra 10 or 15 seconds to be able to identify, why are you making it harder for people, right? I make the same accusation, by the way. I mean, not accusation, the same observation, for example, about, Mass Brothers labels. On the back of it, there was never any indication about nutrition information. And, they were way too big a company to be able to file for small business labeling exemptions, right? They had an idea about what the look should be, and they just felt that this information, they couldn't make it pretty and fit in with their brand identity. All right. And why are you making it difficult for me or anybody to go find the information that we need? I know that's not a directly analogous situation, right? But we can also go take a look at the Mass Brothers situation, where in 2013, 2012, or something like that, they took possession of a bunch of cocoa from the Dominican Republic and claimed that they had paid 4 times market price for it at the time. Independent verification is really hard to get on these things. But if you start digging behind the story, what you do is you find out that they put the cocoa on a sailing ship from the Dominican Republic to the port of New York, but they didn't have export paperwork and they didn't have import paperwork. Just they tried to land it, and customs said, I'm sorry, you can't take it off the boat. So what they ended up having to do is they ended up having to hire somebody to help them just fix the paperwork nightmare. Otherwise, they were just going to have to dump the cocoa. It wouldn't be allowed into the country. And by the time they got paying for their mistakes for not understanding the import and export regulations, they ended up paying 4 times market price. But that's not what they paid to the farmer. And I personally think that when people look at prices that get paid, they want to know what the farmer got paid, and they want to know what the differential is between what the farmer paid and what the chocolate maker purchased their cocoa for. They want to know what that difference is. Because if you talk about making an impact to the farmer, what you paid at the port of export doesn't tell them anything, right? And I would say this to any chocolate maker who wants to do a transparency report. If you're going to do that, talk to your suppliers and find out what they paid at the farm gate price. One of the things that's missing, right, in this, I really love the fact that, I really love the fact that they've got this pricing chart, Uncommon does, and then they've got the information repeated here, right? In reality, what I want to know is okay, I don't care I do care what the differential is between what they paid in Belize and what the fair trade price is and what the market price might have been. What I also want to know is, how does this differ from the market price in Belize, farm gate price in Belize, right? Obviously the only place where I can do a one-to-one comparison is in Ghana, because I know what the farm gate price is in Ghana, and I can compare the price I pay with the farm gate price in Ghana. That I can do, right? But is it possible for me to be paying what seems to be a high price, but at the farm gate, but is in fact below the average for the entire country? The Dominican Republic could be a good example of that. It's 4% of the world's cocoa, something like that. So they grow a lot, and the farm gate price is going to be different around the country. So are you paying above the average farm gate price in the country you're working with, right? Which would be another interesting data point. Every one of these countries has got some sort of agricultural ministry which tracks this data, and you want to be able to get that data and present it. Now, again, I am a geek. I want to know this information. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put together a picture which will enable me to talk confidently, right, about the real situation, about what's going on. I want to be able to represent that, in fact, craft chocolate makers are, in fact, making a difference generally, right? And this is the information that I have available to me, and I'm going to use the publicly available information in order to be able to try to make that distinction. Another place where we can go, the Taza Chocolate Report. Not only do they have Abokfa, but they also have Pisa in Haiti. And Pisa is another origin that Uncommon uses. And so I can check the prices in the same way. I can look at the number of farmers and all this other data. Interesting stuff. Being able to corroborate things is really, really valuable. And then it's not a question of catching anybody in a gotcha, right? That's not what it is that I'm trying to do here. When people ask me why I want to know the information, it's because I'm trying to gain a complete picture, not to get a gotcha. It's just that this does seem to make sense, or this number doesn't make sense. All right. So, for example, if I'm doing 100 kilos per farmer dry equivalent, okay, number one, if I'm not a subject matter expert, I need to know what dry equivalent is, right? I buy $3.07 times 100. Oh, $309. That makes sense. That makes sense. All right. But when it comes to Oko Caribe, right, 11,700, this is dry equivalent 4 tons. Now, it could be a typo. I don't know, right? But it doesn't seem to be. 115 times 4 metric tons, right, which is 10 times higher than 37.8 metric tons, right? These are the inconsistencies that I'm looking for. Again, not a gotcha. I just want to understand how to interpret the numbers, right? And I'm a subject matter expert. I know to look for these things. The average consumer doesn't know to look for these things, right? They don't have the background. They don't have the experience. They don't know what they should be looking for. Okay. All right. An important thing. I think that also another thing that's really, really important is one of the things that Taza talks about, and I don't know that I'm going to get to their homepage. And this is boring. This is not a link. It only go home. There is a page where they list all their partner reports, but they talk about their program being certified direct trade. To the best of my knowledge, there is no direct trade certified mark. Right. So what does direct trade certified mean? And so there is a link, right, on one of their pages to this page here, which is their direct trade program commitments, where they talk about, here's what we mean when we say direct trade. And okay, right, we want to develop direct relationships. We want to pay a premium price. We want to source the quality beans. They have to be organically certified. They have to publish an annual report. And here's the verification steps. And my understanding is there is an independent third-party organization, not on this page, but they mention that there's an independent third-party organization that goes, in fact, and takes a look at things and verifies what goes on. And when it comes to these 5 commitments, you can go back and take a look at the disclosure of information they give, and you can go, oh, this is interesting. And most importantly, they lead with the numbers. They lead with the numbers, and then they do the analysis afterwards, rather than leading with the analysis and not having the numbers, not presenting the numbers to back it up. I mean, again, looking at the Dandelion Report, Greg, absolutely. Again, I apologize for not catching that you're talking about paying export prices. Again, right. There's a lot of stuff before you get to the numbers. And why did you go from this format in 1 year to this format in the next year? There's less information here, number one, right? You're not as disclosing as much about the supply chain, and it's spread across 2 pages, and it's much, much harder, right, to anybody to get an idea about what it is that's going on, right? All right, maybe it looks prettier. I don't know the answer to the question. From an infographic perspective, however, it's much more difficult to understand what's going on here, right? Just a thought. This enables me to go understand on 1 page at a glance what the root is. This one is not nearly as informative as this one, right? Right. Even though you had much longer to prepare this report. This is 2019, 2020, 2022, right? So you had over a year and a half to prepare this, right? And it turns out that when it comes to substantive information, there's a lot less in this report than there is in previous reports. For every single one of the cooperatives that you work with or the suppliers that you work with in the 2017, 2018 report, you publish this information. And this information is missing from the 2019, 2020 report. I kind of understand. I don't understand why. It may say somewhere, I only got this morning, right? So you mentioned it to me last night. It may be that you were unable to collect the information. I don't know the answer to that question. You've had a long time to collect the information. I just want to know what's going on and what the difference is. It's really, really important. So the answer is, right. I'm doing my best here. I'm on my own. I've got a lot of windows open, as you can possibly tell. So trying to make sure that I have all the Zoom levels properly so that I can read them and you can read them. That's why these actual documents are going to be embedded. You can go listen to what it is that I'm going on. You can go to these pages. You can download the actual documents or go to the actual web pages and go take a look. Right. All of the information is there if you zoom out. All of the information is there if I zoom out. So I don't see this table format and the information there. All right. So Greg, okay. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get into a back and forth discussion on those things here. I am again, right. I got this morning. And so I haven't been able to go through it. I'm just doing this high level. Oh, these things are different from previous years. This is not where I wanted to go here. What I do want to say is one of the, I think the most egregious examples of using infographics to hide information is Tony's Chocolonely. So I have here 3 different annual reports, 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021. What is interesting about the earliest report, 2018, 2019, is there is a page where they say, oh, right, we paid $520 per ton premium total, right? So that's the fair trade premium plus anything else that Tony's paid in Ivory Coast and $460 per ton in Ghana. And the difference is because, right, the fact that they're different economies. And so the cost of production is different in both those countries. That makes sense, right? Last year, they bought 5,000 tons of cocoa. Their target was 5,500. They worked with a total of 6,000 farmers, and they paid $2.6 million in premiums. And what we can do is we can look at the notion of 6,624. No, it's 2,600. I'm actually doing the calculation in front of me. Over 6,624. And what we can figure out is they paid $392 per year in premium on average. So, okay. There's a little discrepancy in there. It's hard to know where that discrepancy is. You come to the next report, and rather than being on page 30 or 27, 26 and 27, we find the same information is on page 92, right? And there's not as much information here. So they say they're going to purchase 9,900 metric tons from 6 partner cooperatives. So here's a really, really important thing to know about Tony's, right? is that their supply chain is incredibly small. So they purchase through one company, Cocoa Source, and they purchase from 6 cooperatives, right, in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, right? And they purchase 7,118 metric tons from Cocoa Source and another 2,780 metric tons via Tony's Open Chain, right? Their supply chain is really, really tiny. And so it's easy to have a segregated cocoa supply chain when it's that small, compared with calling out Mondelez, Hershey, Mars, Nestle, Barry Callebaut. And one of the things that's interesting about this particular report is that you can actually go and find out where they do talk about their relationship with Barry Callebaut. And it's interesting to hear what it is that they have to say about Barry Callebaut. What they will not say is that their company is financially dependent upon Barry Callebaut, which is interesting. I mean, they try to say we're working with Barry Callebaut because what we want to do is we want to change the way they source. Well, if if the change the way they source is 2,000 metric tons of cocoa out of 5.5 million, I don't think that's very much impact, right, with respect to Barry Callebaut. Their sales this year, they say they crossed the 100 million mark, which makes them in the top 110, 120 confectionery companies in the world. So, they're a big player, especially in the Netherlands and the UK, their 2 largest markets. So it's really, really interesting to know about the numbers and find out exactly what their footprint is, what their impact is, what it is that they're able to do with what's going on. Another thing to think about, another thing to point out here is that on this page, this is where Tony says that basically Rainforest Alliance is doing most of the hard work, right? And that there is a CLMRS, a Child Labor Monitoring and Remediation System. Sometimes they refer to it as our CLMRS, but it's one which is organized by the International Cocoa Initiative, the ICI, to which Tony's is now a member, and so they can get advantage of that. But what you do is you find that, all right, despite everything that Tony says, and they've been in business for over 20 years, right? Despite everything, what we do is we find that in the last year, there were 1,700 child workers in their supply chain, right? Which were found in their supply chain. Now, Tony's will say the fact that that's the argument they're making in this article. Oh, we found this illegal labor in our supply chain. Therefore, our child labor monitoring and remediation system is working. But the broader context, stepping back into 20 or 30,000 feet, 10,000 meters for people who are in the metric system, is that the fundamental challenge, right, is trying to alleviate the circumstances which make child labor necessary. And I hesitated over the word necessary, but I think I'm going to keep that word necessary. They're not addressing the underlying circumstances which make child labor a necessary thing. And I don't think it's up to a single company. I don't think it's possible. I mean, the industry, the chocolate industry, which is supposed to be or confectionery industry generally supposed to be 280 billions by the end of the decade, there are enough resources to be able to address this problem. But it also means addressing, endemic poverty in sub-Saharan West Africa. What is it that's going on in Burkina Faso and Mali, right, that makes it necessary, or not necessary, but makes it seem like a good idea for my children to go into slavery, right? I don't know the answer to that question, but sure as heck, paying a little bit more at the farm gate doesn't solve the problem if the money doesn't get back to the parents of the children, and the children who are doing the work are not paid. I mean, focusing on that money, right, is the wrong place to be focusing the whole conversation. And this is what being able to look at these different reports and trying to get to an apples to apples comparison and understand what they're actually saying. I mean, this whole discussion over here on the right-hand page, right? Living income is the new norm. Well, this is a bunch of, in my opinion, this is an example of socially acceptable economic imperialism. This is a bunch of predominantly white people, right, in the global north, telling predominantly brown people in the global south that we think this is what's fair, right? And I'm sorry, right? I have fundamental opposition, all right, to that whole concept. The notion is we've decided that it's fair If your average income is $1,700 a year, right, that's fair. What that does is the industry says, oh, as long as we meet that $1,700 target, we're doing our job. But is in fact $1,700, is that a reasonable target? And that $1,700 isn't from cocoa. That's a blended, right, income. That's all the income from all the sources these farmers have, not just from cocoa. It's more in some countries than it is in other countries. It's more for some farmers and less for others. But, right, how do you look at this, right, and be able to say this is fair, right? And I've had a bunch of conversations, written a bunch of posts about this whole notion of what is and is not fair. All right. So, all right. So, again, I apologize to Greg is making some announcements about I just have this thing zoomed out improperly, and so I'm not seeing information. I'm sorry. I'm looking at a bunch of different screens simultaneously. Sorry. Sorry. And I'm having problems with my pad controlling the zoom in Safari on my second screen. I understand. If I were to not zoom out, but perhaps widen this page. Okay, so hey, Greg, right? I've got this full screen and I've got it zoomed out and it's not turning itself into a double page spread for me, right? So it may be there, that information may be there, right? And it may be instantly available, but right, in Safari, the document is not wrapping for me properly. Maybe it was if I opened up this in preview or opened up in some other browser, but in this particular case, it's not doing it. So thanks for all that kind of stuff. But now that I understand what it is you're trying to say, it's not working for me. So, Teresa, you make an interesting point, which is about misdirection. In the case of Tony's Chocolonely, I believe it is deliberate. I personally believe it is deliberate misdirection. What they're trying to do is they're trying to change the conversation. And one way in which you can tell that they're looking to change the conversation is, for example, let's go take a look at the homepage, right? So here is the homepage, the first page of the 2018 report, right? We know it's Tony's Chocolonely. And here's the homepage of the, I'm sorry, I have to scroll because keyboard's not working properly. Need to restart. We go to the next report. I mean, there is a lot of stuff going on here, which has nothing to do with anything, right? Right. They're trying to create a narrative. They're spinning a narrative that makes you feel good, and they're burying the numbers, right? Which is always a bad sign. So I believe that this is deliberate. They're trying to, do all these things. And again, I'm sorry because it's a long document and I'm trying to get to the top. But on the 2019-2020 report, it's Tony's Chocolonely. If we go to the current report, right, fortunately, it's a double page spread. I have to know that this is Tony's Chocolonely in order to get the fact that it's Tony's Chocolonely, right? There's a lot of graphics here, right? You look at how they're playing the information. If I want to look, the difference between this graphic, right, and chart about how I go look things, right, this is designed to make it more difficult to understand what the underlying numbers are. I believe this is deliberate design. It's very pretty. It's very bright. It's Tony's on brand, right? But think about this: slave-free farmers, all right? Total after 20 years, right? They claim, right, that they have an impact on 9,000. I'm going to guess 9,000 farming families, not just farmers. So this is the farmer, the farmer's spouse, and any children, right? But they're only talking about the head of household here. There are 2.5 million farmers, right, in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. So I could do the math and find out what 8,000 numbers is out of 2.5 million. This number looks really good, right? This 109,000 serious friends, right? This is people who signed up to their mailing list or something like that, as near as I can tell. Serious friends, right? Again, what they're trying to do is they're making things look a particular way, right? And in this particular case, what I will say is Tony's is very good at marketing. They're brilliant at marketing. In the world of cocoa and chocolate, they are probably the best in the world doing what it is they're doing in terms of spinning narrative. And right. But in terms of actually delivering impact, what I want to know is, how have they changed? I would love a disclosure from anybody at Tony's, Paul Shoemaker's, anyway. I would love to know how that they have impact. And I want to get, senior Barry Callebaut executives, either on marketing or R&D or someplace like that, to be able to come out and say, we have changed our policies specifically because of Tony Chocolonely's pressure to change policies, right? And that this is the total impact in terms of the quantity of cocoa that's been purchased, the dollars that have been purchased, all that kind of stuff that is directly attributable to Tony's influence in changing our minds about what it is that we are doing, right? That's what I would like as an impact report from Tony's, not the fact that they helped, some number of farmers, because it's great. You've improved the lives of, some number, 8,900, whatever that number was, but there are 2.5 million. And to me, after 20 years, that strikes to me as to be a very, very, very tiny impact. I mean, but the graphics look pretty. They tell a fabulous story. See, 2,500,000 smallholder farmers, 95% doing hazardous work, right? We have had an impact on 8,921 of them out of 2.5 million, right? Right. This is really interesting. I did that on accidents. Wow. $100 million in sales. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. In the candy industry, top 100 for 2022, the 100th firm was at 134 million in sales. So this is really, really quite remarkable in terms of what they're doing. It's also important to know that the corporate parent of Tony's Chocolonely, or the major investor in Tony's Chocolonely, is a private family-owned investment fund, which is actually a major investor in AB InBev. Hard to know about what I think about that relationship, but when we think about Tony's Chocolonely and what it is that they're doing, we need to go take a look at who their investors are and what their investors doing in order to be able to understand, are these good actors in all these other places? Sort of like the ecom question with Uncommon, right? If I'm building on the back of Uncommon, if I'm Tony's building on the back of Barry Callebaut, if the major investment in my company is in fact not a positive impact investor, how does that change my evaluation of what the company is? And the final thing that I want to get to today, I don't want to talk about if I had more time, we'd do that, is differences between the 2021 and 2022 chocolate scorecard. So this is the last one that was done by Mighty Earth. The 2022 scorecard was done by an organization out of Australia called Be Slavery Free, with support of Mighty Earth, the Voice Network, a bunch of other people. One of the things, so this is where I come up with the notion of infographics and how infographics can misdirect. Again, I don't believe it's deliberate, right? But, and this is actually a conversation that I had with one of the people involved in putting this together last year. So here what we have is we have a series of topics. We are rating each one of these companies on due diligence, right? Traceability and transparency, living income, child labor, deforestation, climate, and agroforestry. And we run through some rubric. There's a methodology, which they do not link to on the scorecard, but you can get to it from their website. My guess is that 99.7%, right, being hyperbolic there, but the vast majority of people who look at the scorecard do not look at the methodology. And so the methodology might as well be black box, right? Because we just have to take it for granted that these people did their homework and that the work that they're doing is in fact statistically valid. I actually talked to someone who is a statistician who tried to put some numbers associated with each of these colored eggs and was not able to come up with any kind of valid correlation between the color and anything which would give a mark which you could put a solid number to. Real challenge. But when you go to the most recent report, no longer is the Easter chocolate scorecard, it's just the chocolate scorecard. I'm not certain why that change was done, because it was brought out in time for Easter, is you'll notice that due diligence as a category is gone, right? And it has been replaced with agricultural management. Fortunately, traceability, all these other columns are the same, right? So if you wanted to do some sort of statistical analysis, you could, in fact, assign numbers to each one of the colors, right? But you cannot compare 2021 with 2022 because the evaluation criteria are different, right? Just off the charts, right? If what we're looking for is evaluating the improvement in performance, right, we cannot do it on an apples to apples basis or an Easter bunny to Easter bunny basis or an egg to egg basis. Just can't be done. This whole presentation is meaningless, right? In terms of we cannot compare this with this, right? So this is a place where infographics, the organization and presentation of information, right, obfuscates our ability to be able to draw any reasonable conclusions from the data, right? One of the other things they did, which is really interesting, is they went from organizing by alphabetically here to organizing by bunny color here, right? And so Nestle and Chocolate's Alba both have yellow bunnies, but if we actually look at the numbers, it's not just 3 green eggs, 1 orange, and 2 yellow, but we actually look at the numbers under these. So Nestle comes up higher than Chocolate's Alba, right? But if we take a look at the previous year, what we do is we find out Berry Calabout is on this page. And guess what? It gets a yellow bunny with 3 oranges and 3 yellows, and yellow is better than orange, as I recall. Yellow is worse than orange. Orange needs more, or no, yeah, yellow is better than orange. Interesting, right? So red is this way, so we go from worst to best in this year. This year it's from best to worst. I mean, they just make it much, much harder to be able to evaluate what it is that they're doing by not really paying attention to, right? Or deliberately obfuscating, which I don't think they're doing based on conversations I've had with people. I don't think they're deliberately obfuscating it. They're just unaware of the fact. Anyway, going back to this, couple of things, all right? Chocolate's Alba is the company that makes the chocolate for Alter Ego. That relationship is not disclosed, right? But it's really cool that Alter Ego and Chocolate's Alba both get green bunnies. Yay, right? But this year, guess what, right? Sorry, right? Alter Ego is on the homepage, and Chocolate's Alba doesn't get a green bunny anymore. Doesn't get a green bunny, right? Right. What they do is they get a yellow bunny, right? And we'd have to, now it's on, different pages, and I'd have to go back and forth, put Chocolate's Alba here, Chocolate's, and I'm sorry, what is the difference? I have too many windows open. So I have to go back and forth between these two in order to be able to figure out what the difference is. It's really, really difficult to do this. But why does Alter Ego keep this position when its chocolate supplier is down here? Interesting question. It's the same issue that I have with Berry Calabout. Berry Calabout just happens to be on page 1 last year because it was ordered alphabetically, right? But got a yellow bunny here, right? 3 oranges, not so good, but Tony's Chocolonely is here, right? Right. And the only thing it's like, okay, agroforestry. We look at this and all of a sudden, right, they get a green with agroforestry, but they went backwards on deforestation and climate. It's really hard to compare what's going on. But Berry Calabout is no longer, because it's not alphabetical, it's nowhere here. You have to go all the way down to page 6, right, where we find out that, they're no longer a yellow bunny, they're an orange bunny, and they've got a red, right, which they didn't have this year, right? So why is Tony's here? And by the way, this relationship between Tony's and Berry Calabout is not disclosed, right? Which is really kind of weird, because you'll see, when it comes to Ferrero, right, which is moved up to this page, they mention some of the products that are associated with Ferrero. So this is really, really difficult to decode. It's inconsistent. It's much more difficult than it needs to be. They do not make it easy to go about doing this. There is no link. There is no link anywhere in the PDF that I have been able to find, which actually is the link to the methodology. The methodology tells you what categories of questions they ask and what the scoring system is, but we don't actually know anything about the statistical analysis. So we don't know if, for example, if these categories are weighted. I mean, is each one of them equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 16 and a bit percent, or is this one 25% and this one is less? I mean, there's no way to know how this is actually calculated. And so in that respect, it's really a black box methodology. Another thing that's totally missing here that I want to, so number one is it needs an arrow that says, or some sort of document that says this is last year's position and this is this year's position, right? So we need like, number of weeks on the chart with a bullet, right? Or that sort of thing on here in order to be able to help people understand what it is that's going on. It's really, really important so that we know what it is from last year according to this year. Really, really important to be able to do. The other thing is that I would really like to know is how big these companies are, right? So Tony's, right, we now know is 100 million in sales. And we know how big their supply chain is, right? Because they say in this report, we know 6 cooperatives, 12,000 metric tons, right? I have no idea, right, how much chocolate, how much cocoa is processed to make Alter Ego chocolate. All right. Alter Ego is a marketing company. They're not a manufacturing company. All right. Tony's is a marketing company, not a manufacturing company. But Beyond Good is really interesting. I know the founders of this. I've known them from the very beginning. But what I really want to know is how big this company. What I would like to know is that there is a report somewhere. Maybe there is one. I haven't found it. I'll go look for it now that I think about it. Right. But I'd like to know how many farmers, right, they're affected. I want to know how much they paid. I want to know how big they are. Because what might be really, really easy to do at 5,000 metric tons is going to be harder to do at 12,000 metric tons and is going to be much, 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 much harder to do when you're talking about 100,000 metric tons or more. So there's a lot of information in here. We're, quince to pears to papaya to asparagus is what we're trying to compare here. It's just really, really, really difficult to do. And that is what it is that I wanted to point out during the course of today's live stream. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to thank everybody who comments. Thank everybody who did a thumbs up to the like. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, go and press the subscribe button on the Chocolate Wire where I'm doing this. And if you have other transparency reports from other companies, I would be happy to go and share them around. I do want to say that, of course, that I do keep this post on the Chocolate Life. I will update this post and I will mention that it is updated. I will put other resources on this page. So if people supply me with things, I put things in there, I will be happy to go about and make that happen so that we can, so that you will be able to take a look and then re-listen to what it is what I presented here today in order to be able to do it. Right. I also want to say that, right, I studied fine arts at a design school, Rhode Island School of Design, and took classes in graphic design and information graphics. And some of my professors happened to be, semioticians. I mean, world-leading semioticians. So semioticians about the meaning of science, semiotics. And one of whom actually worked on user interface components for Apple Lisa. So again, early 1980s. And I'm looking at this from a point of view of information design. We're presenting information. If we want to present information in a way that is understandable, right, and that is where we can easily extract things, right? It's, having a graphic designer do this, but not having an information designer take a look at it is makes it much more difficult for someone who is interested in extracting the numbers to be able to get at the numbers that they are looking for. Right. And so if you're watching this and you are a chocolate maker, you're a cocoa broker, anybody who's interested in producing a transparency report, think about how the way you present the information is going, if you're not already doing it, right? Think about how you're presenting the information and how that could enhance or undercut. And this is, it cuts both ways. The numbers that you present and the way you present them can enhance the narrative that you're trying to make. Right. And irrespective of pretty graphics and pretty photographs and all that kind of stuff, right, which is touchy feely, in the end, what's important, I think, to most people who want to look at specialty chocolate is how are we improving the lives of farmers? If I'm supporting your brand, how are we improving the lives of the farmers? And you need to look at the numbers that you present and the way you present them, right, to help not just educated consumers, subject matter experts like me, right, but also somebody who doesn't have, right, the expertise that I have or that many people who are watching this today might have. Think about that, right? Think about it from an information design perspective, not just a graphic design perspective, and understand that your report may not exist in isolation, right? So that if you're purchasing through a broker and they're representing one price and you're not, and you're representing a different price, there may be a reason for representing that different price, and it may be understandable, but it's important that there be that extreme clarity. And so having 10 pages of narrative before you get to the numbers, where you expect people to read very carefully. That's the point that I made to the organizers of the chocolate scorecard this year, is do not expect that just because the methodology is available, that people will go and read the methodology, right? If you don't have the numbers right there in front of people where they can make, right, the direct correlation, so they can look from one part of the page to another part of the page, not from page 2 of the document to page 80 of the document. I'm exaggerating, right? There's no specific example. You're making it much more difficult than it needs to be for people to be able to extract the information that they actually want in order to be able to make good decisions about what you're doing, and to be able to have confidence. And this is the important part. We want people who are buying the chocolate, who are buying the products we make, to have confidence, right, that what chocolate makers are saying, what cocoa growers are saying, we want them to have confidence, right, that the statements that they're making are in fact true, right? And you can do a lot to make it easy for people to understand that, or you can do a lot to make it much harder for people to understand it. Again, right, I don't know motivations. I'm not calling anybody out and claiming that they're doing this deliberately, other than the one representation that I made. It's just that I notice, because I'm trained to notice, and because I'm a geek and I'm a little obsessive about it. These things are important to me, and I think they're important to a lot of people other than me. And so, even though it's been a really, really serious topic today, haven't had a whole lot of laughs, haven't had a whole lot of smiles going on. And I do want to remind everybody that if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Until next week, ciao, everybody. Thanks for joining me today on the Chocolate Life Live.